For the umpteenth time, Russian troops attempted to breach the Ukrainian front line using a large motorcycle convoy. This strategy was chosen to move faster, reduce footprints in the muddy terrain, and avoid attacks that typically target armored vehicles. But this time, the plan turned into a nightmare in a matter of minutes. Ukrainian FPV drone operators were already monitoring every movement. As dozens of motorcycles began moving toward the front line, their monitors were immediately filled with fast-moving targets. What happened next demonstrates how modern warfare is no longer solely determined by troop numbers, but also by the speed of information, coordination, and accuracy of attacks. So, how were Ukrainian FPV drones able to track down this large convoy one by one? Why did the motorcycle tactic, which had previously provided advantages, now become an easy target? Read this discussion until the end, because each stage of the operation shows how technology is changing the course of battle on the front lines. As the operation began, the situation in the combat sector appeared relatively calm. However, this calm was short-lived. Based on aerial reconnaissance footage, Ukrainian drone operators detected a large convoy of Russian motorcycles beginning to move from a protected area toward a path leading to Ukrainian defensive positions. The convoy consisted of dozens of motorcycles moving in a group with a certain distance between them. This pattern is typically used to allow troops to disperse more quickly when approaching the line of contact, while also reducing the risk of a single vehicle being hit. At high speed, they hoped to pass through the open area before Ukrainian surveillance systems could lock onto their position. Unbeknownst to them, the entire convoy's movements had been under surveillance by Ukrainian surveillance drones from the start. The coordinates of each route were transmitted in real time to a team of FPV drone operators stationed at several different points. As soon as the convoy entered the open area with minimal cover, the attack command was issued. One by one, the FPV drone zoomed along at high speed, following the convoy's path. From the drone camera's perspectives, the riders could be seen accelerating their vehicles, seeking cover behind trees, bushes, and lower elevations. However, the FPV drone's speed was much higher, and it was able to continuously correct its course until it approached its target. The first explosion disrupted the convoy's formation. One of the motorcycles immediately stopped after being hit by the drone. Other riders behind it immediately swerved to avoid the blast. However, this maneuver only further disorganized their formation. The Ukrainian operators apparently weren't in a rush to expend all their ammunition at once. They chose to attack vehicles at the front and rear of the convoy first. This tactic hindered the Russian troops' movement, while the group in the middle lost room for maneuver. Under these conditions, the next wave of drones began to arrive. Now, the targets were no longer just the vehicles still moving, but also personnel attempting to abandon their motorcycles and seek cover around the movement route. Every time one group tried to regroup, another drone immediately approached from a different direction. The ongoing pressure caused the convoy to lose momentum. Some vehicles were seen abandoned, while personnel attempted to disperse in various directions to reduce the risk of becoming the next target. This is one of the main advantages of Ukraine's current FPV drone operations. The attacks were not random, but based on constantly updated aerial reconnaissance information. As long as the target was still visible, the operator could direct the next drone to the most important target. Within minutes, the initially large, fast-moving convoy became a scattered mess of small groups. Efforts to break through the defense line lost coordination, diminishing the chances of reaching Ukrainian positions. But the operation wasn't over. After destroying most of the vehicles in the open area, the focus shifted to personnel who had escaped the first wave. How did Ukraine ensure they couldn't regroup? That's what we'll discuss in the next section. Interestingly, the Ukrainian drones' targets in this operation weren't just the motorcycles carrying the assault troops. Behind the convoy, several Russian armored vehicles and tanks were also reportedly moving to provide fire cover and support if the frontline troops managed to open a gap in the Ukrainian defenses. However, as has often been seen in previous battles, armored vehicles proved to be high-value targets for Ukrainian drone operators. Once the position of the tanks and combat vehicles was identified by the reconnaissance drone, their coordinates were immediately relayed to the FPV team already on standby. Shortly thereafter, several drones launched from different directions, exploiting the terrain's contours to remain elusive until the very last moment. From the FPV camera's perspective, one of the Russian tanks was seen continuing along a dirt track, while the other vehicles attempted to maintain their distance behind it. The vehicle crews appeared to be aware of the aerial threat, but spotting the small, fast-moving FPV drones was no easy task. Moments later, an explosion occurred around the lead vehicle. The vehicle formation immediately slowed down. The next drone operator exploited this situation to target the vehicles behind, causing the convoy to lose its rhythm and no longer be able to provide effective support to the motorcycle troops already under attack. With logistics and support vehicle lines disrupted, the pressure on Russian forces increased. The infantry at the front lost the protection of armored vehicles, while tanks and combat vehicles were forced to stop, maneuver, or seek cover from the constant drone threat. This combination of attacks on motorcycle convoys and armored vehicles typifies Ukraine's current operational pattern. Rather than destroying a single target, they sought to disrupt the entire chain of attack simultaneously, from the assault force to the support vehicles to the convoy's movement path, thus disrupting coordination in attempts to breach the defense line from the outset. After most of the armored vehicles and motorcycle convoys were stopped, the situation on the battlefield changed dramatically. Smoke from several damaged vehicles began to obscure the open area, while the remaining Russian personnel sought cover in trees, trenches, and hollows. However, for the Ukrainian drone operators, the operation was not yet over. Reconnaissance drones continued to circle above the battle area, monitoring every movement. Thanks to their aerial perspective, any group attempting to shift position was immediately detected. This information was immediately relayed to the FPV operators and artillery units behind the defense lines. Some Russian personnel were seen attempting to leave the main route and move through vegetation, hoping to evade drone detection. However, the open terrain in several spots made it easier for the Ukrainian operators to track their movements. At the same time, another wave of FPV drones was launched. This time, the attack focused on preventing the Russian forces from regrouping into a single formation. Whenever a group began to move together, drones were immediately directed at that location, scattering them again. This tactic had a very clear objective. In modern operations, troops that lose coordination will find it much more difficult to continue an attack than troops that are still able to move in organized formation. Without good communications and the support of combat vehicles, their ability to penetrate the defense line will continue to decline. On the other hand, the Ukrainian defense units used this time to strengthen their positions. The expected routes of future movement were continuously monitored by reconnaissance drones, so any new approaches were identified early. From a tactical analysis, this operation demonstrates how Ukraine does not rely solely on a single weapon. Reconnaissance drones were used to locate targets. FPV drones were utilized to conduct precision strikes, while coordination with ground units ensured sustained pressure on the enemy without giving them time to regroup. This is what made the attack on the Russian convoy so effective. Once the advance elements were cut off, support vehicles were disabled, and personnel were forced to scatter, the overall momentum of the attack slowly dissipated. Under such conditions, the mission to breach the defense line became increasingly difficult to continue. So, what impact did this operation have on the battle sector as a whole? Was the convoy's failure merely a temporary tactical disadvantage, or did it actually impact Russia's ability to launch subsequent attacks? We will discuss this analysis in the next section. From the entire series of operations we've discussed, it's clear that Ukraine's success wasn't solely due to the sheer number of drones used, but rather to the coordination established at every stage of the operation. Reconnaissance drones first spotted the convoy. FPV operators then attacked the most decisive vehicles, while support units continuously monitored to prevent Russian forces from regrouping. The motorcycle convoy strategy, designed for rapid movement, can indeed reduce reliance on armored vehicles in certain terrain. However, when the entire movement route is under constant aerial surveillance, speed alone is no longer sufficient to guarantee success. Every movement can be detected, followed, and targeted with precision strikes in a very short time. Modern warfare now demonstrates that victory is determined not only by the number of tanks or the number of personnel on the front lines, but also by the ability to master information, reconnaissance, and real-time inter-unit coordination. Whoever spots the enemy first usually has a greater chance of controlling the battle. What do you think? Will Russia continue to use motorcycle convoy tactics in future operations, or will new strategies emerge to counter Ukraine's FPV drone dominance? Share your thoughts in the comments section, as every perspective will broaden our horizons. If you enjoy our step-by-step, in-depth, and easy-to-understand military analysis, don't forget to click, like, subscribe, and activate the notification bell to stay updated on the latest developments in conflict, military technology, and tactical analysis across various battlefields. In the next video, we'll discuss another equally tense operation where a Ukrainian unit successfully detected the movement of Russian troops attempting to infiltrate through a route deemed secure. However, unbeknownst to them, their entire movement had been monitored from the air, and what followed makes for one of the most fascinating operations to analyze. See you in the next video.